If there's one thing I want to start off this review by saying, it is the fact that I am no Dark Souls fan. Quite the contrary. Back in 2010, when Demon Souls came out, I actually got the Day 1 edition, and because of some family decisions, well, it was the only game I could really play, and I ended up beating it, and also ended up hating it. The only reward I got from finishing that game was trauma and an insane amount of hatred, making me stay away from any game that's FromSoftware made after that. However, 11 years later, a few pals I met through the power of the internet actually persuaded me into trying the original Dark Souls, with a few mods included, to really make me go in there, and you know what? I think they succeeded.
I'll take that.
You got to revive?
He did it! He did it! I think you may have kicked her out onto the... Oh no.
God fucking damn it.
Now the reason I'm saying this is so that you as a viewer can understand that this review is made by a guy who originally hated this genre. But again, because of the Dark Souls 1 playthrough with the mods, I was open in trying out this open world experience. And I am so happy I tried it out because holy, this game is amazing! In all honesty, I have no clue on how it happened, but this thing went from being a random game I was willing to let pass me by to become probably my favorite open world experience I've ever had the pleasure in playing. Also, this will be a spoiler-free review, so if you have any worries about that, no need to shake in fear, no spoilers to be found here. Therefore, let's begin with something that a lot of people love about these games, the story. So, as spoiler-free as possible, the setting takes place in the world known as the Lands Between. And after the object known as the Elden ring was shattered into several shards, the land was driven to a massive war, led by demigods, all of whom have a piece of this powerful relic. You,
me,
the Tarnished, want to collect all of these runes to become the new ruler of the land, to become the Elden Lord. Now, I kept a lot of details hidden for obvious reasons, but the primary goal is to pretty much search for these powerful demigods, making the entire adventure a weird boss rush, if you will. Very much like the previous Souls games, the story isn't really spoon-fed to the player through cutscenes or any of the other typical video gamey ways. Most of the narrative and lore is told through optional NPC interactions, looking at the world and its visual storytelling and the classic item descriptions, which, in my personal opinion, has never been the most natural way of telling a story. That being said, I do really like reading all of these item stuff, but if you don't really care about that or have any interest in seeking out easy-to-miss NPCs, the story and lore can really just vanish completely from your playthrough. So while I personally love the world and characters made here, I'm not the biggest fan of the narrative, again, how the story is told. What I am a fan of, however, is the fact that there are several endings, depending on your actions. A lot of side quests will have different consequences, again, player choice dependent, and yes, there is a ton of side quests. But no quest log, which I personally would have liked, considering that in these open world games you will constantly find new stuff and eventually something is bound to be forgotten, so yeah, keep that in mind. As minimalistic as it may seem, there's a lot of story here, and I don't really want to go too much deeper into it, as I feel like this game should be experienced as blind as possible. What is great about it is that the game doesn't force feed you like exposition or cutscenes. It actually allows the player to partake in the story as much as they want to, which I think is great considering every other game out there. And speaking of like no handholding, let's talk about the biggest part of this game that really should sell you on it: the gameplay. The best way to start explaining the gameplay is by making this as clear as possible. Elden Ring is a Souls game. The challenge is here. Just because this is open world does not mean that they decided on making something completely different gameplay-wise. Now, I will try to explain everything to the best of my abilities, as if you have no clue on what a Souls game is, I feel that is for the best, as clearly Elden Ring has already grown to the extreme in popularity. Hence, someone might not know how this all works. Combat is the primary source of this game. You start off by deciding your starter class, if you will, but from there on out you can build your character in whatever way you want. You know, you're not locked in to a playstyle by the character creator. I personally went for a pure tank of a boy named
Mongo,
great barbarian from the north, seeking to conquer new lands for his kingdom.
And I never touched a spell throughout my entire 90 hours first playthrough, nor did I touch any bow until roughly 40 hours. I really wanted to know if I could play this game as a wall of testosterone. Anyways, killing enemies will allow you to gain runes, and with runes you can level up your character or use them as currency to buy stuff. Now what adds on to the challenge of Souls-like games is the fact that when you die, you lose all of them. Now, if you return to where you fell, you can reclaim everything unless you died before collecting your stash, meaning that they're gone forever. Now, I have a little tip for any new players that might be interested in getting this game, and that's the fact: do not worry too much about dying and losing your runes. It is actually surprisingly easy to accumulate a lot of them, yeah, so don't really be too disheartened if you die and lose all of them. Also, another tip: when you have enough to level up, just do it. Don't hold on to them too much, just level up. Combat is what you will do for the most of the time with this game's gameplay, and the enemies you'll encounter are punishing indeed. Regular opponents can, depending on your build, 2 to 3 shot you. And bosses will most likely give you a rough time at the beginning. I will not be ashamed to say that I was stuck at the first true boss for almost 2 hours. In my pitiful defense, I hadn't really leveled up, nor found any good gear, so he was one of them one-shotting a-holes. Seriously, the amount of times that I heard this line...
Put these foolish ambitions to rest. Put these foolish ambitions to rest. Put these foolish ambitions to rest. Put these...
I wanted to rip my hair out of my skull. Regardless, after this gatekeeping omen, the game truly got easier and easier with each level, and after upgrading my weapons, which is something that you really have to do, as it, increases your damage output severely. Though, from what I could see, it's not possible to upgrade the armor pieces. I don't really know when this changed, if there was an earlier game FromSoft made, but in Dark Souls 1 and 2 definitely, that mechanic exists. Still, upgrading your vigor will help your survivability. I will say that again. Upgrading, leveling up, putting points into your vigor will help you. I will say that one thing that they brought back from the original sequel is power stancing, which is when you dual wield 2 weapons of the same type, which will give you a special combo with the L1/left bumper button. I ended up having copies of the Axe of Godric, ending up with a ton of extra damage, which always helps. Another thing that will help you a lot is something completely original introduced in this game: Spirit Ashes. In every other Souls game, you can summon some NPCs to help you out with some of the bosses. You can even do that here. However, the spirits allow you to bring forth certain companions, which you can find around the world to help you. They aren't summonable everywhere, but at places where they matter the most. Again, I spent most of my time being a lonely tanky boy, so I didn't test this system out to its fullest, but when I did, I can firmly say that they absolutely are helping the player. One thing I did use quite a bit is the multiplayer function. When it comes to challenging games like this, it's always been a joy of playing with your friends, whether it be against dual bosses or just merely exploring the world. One thing to keep in mind when playing co-op is that bosses will be more difficult with a higher health pool, and the certainty that some other players can invade you, to which you and your buddies have to kill them. Invading players can't enter your world if you play alone, but again, it definitely will happen when going multiplayer. Not much more I can really say about the co-op aside from the fact that it feels great, but my friends and I had some issues when playing 3 people together. They might have fixed it already, but when we tried the triple mode, someone always got booted out pretty quickly. Exploration, as mentioned, is the second route of this game's journey. There are tons of stuff both to find and enjoy. World bosses, dungeons that are combat-based or gimmick trials, mines where you can find materials for upgrading stuff, merchants, random NPCs with quests, items that upgrade your healing, caravans you can attack for some loot, NPC invaders, and the list goes on. If there's one thing an open world game needs, it is good exploration and having it be rewarding. And this game does it fantastically. I swear, there hasn't been a single dungeon or a boss or anything that didn't give me a worthwhile reward. It's actually insane. Every place I went, a good reward. It's been such a long time since I've enjoyed an open sandbox, and I am so happy that it turned out this good. That being said, there are a few negatives here that I feel everyone suspected would be here. Reusing assets everywhere. Optional dungeons, while they give great rewards, feel all the same with very few differences. Again, there are a few exceptions. World bosses are, while impressive and fun at the beginning, a bore after fighting the same enemy constantly. Like seriously, the dragons and Earth Tree avatars, I cannot even bother to fight anymore. Plus, it doesn't help that the dragons are quite janky. Okay. Okay, come on. Okay. Wait. Again, really? Round 2, bitch! One thing I want to make absolutely clear is that reusing bosses and enemies is not inherently bad. Definitely, or especially not in open world games. The issue is in what kind of game this is by heart. Souls-like. In Dark Souls or Bloodborne, you go on a journey, and when you meet the big confrontation, the boss, the challenge is to learn the boss's moveset and how to deal with it and overcoming that challenge. Now, the issue with having an open world and you reuse these bosses quite a bit is the fact that you meet, these grand beasts quite often. To the point where, it's fun meeting a dragon or an Earth Tree avatar the first time. But after the 10th or the 20th, there is no challenge anymore. It's not fun anymore. You're just doing the same thing over and over again, and it's just time consuming and bothersome. Like, I stopped. When I saw those big boys, I just stopped. I didn't even find the runes worth it. The first time is great, but after that it sort of loses its weight in how special it is. Though luckily, the main story bosses, the main story dungeons, the main sort of focus of the game, what you truly are going through in the linearity, if you will, of the story, all of them are just so fantastic. The presentation, the gameplay, everything just amazing! Which perfectly leads us to the presentation, I would say. This game exudes passion from the developers. There were so many times where I had to stop in my tracks to enjoy the landscape, as the world is beautifully made. Great lighting and effects. The design of everything is extraordinary. The models themselves aren't the greatest, but still good. And comparing this game to other open worlds out there, it is high on the list, in my humble opinion. I did, however, notice that there were some poor draw distance stuff in certain areas, primarily with the foliage and such, but it didn't happen that often to be a problem. The world itself has a lot of different areas to explore. I was worried at the beginning that it would be kind of similar everywhere throughout the entire map, but luckily all of them stand out. Something else that stands out, the music. I was quick in getting the soundtrack after hearing some of these tunes. The compositions during the big confrontations are all fantastic, and it is with the music, when you know how challenging each confrontation will be, it can be relatively basic. It can be a dramatic, tough fight. It can amp up to a legendary lore battle. And I feel that every Souls fan understands that when this kind of music plays, shit's about to go down! I do have a few nitpicks as well, like overall, that, again, I feel a bit more personal. The world is, in my opinion, too big. It is easy to run around with Torrent, your good old steed, that allows you to double jump and really get from place to place rather quickly, but there are so many times where I'm just thinking, okay, this didn't need to be here, this point A to point B could have been a bit shorter, etc. Another nitpick I have is pretty much in all of the Souls games, and it is how you discuss and talk with other NPCs. You have this button that you pretty much interact with everything, and when you talk to someone, you just press talk. the NPCs are saying something, and when they stop talking, you press talk again in hope that they have more to say. And you do this to the point where you are pretty much going through all of their dialogue to where they start repeating themselves, that you know, okay, they have nothing more to say. It feels old schoolish, and it takes me out of the experience when I hear the NPCs just saying the same stuff over and over again. I will say overall that the NPCs are great. I really like some of these friendly ones, and there are some really dark ones. I really enjoyed the maturity in some of these stories, but yeah, it's a nitpick that how you discuss and talk to people. Finally, another thing that I just have an issue with is the fact that there is a New Game Plus here, but it does not feel that special. The only New Game Plus I've tried in the other Souls game is Dark Souls 2, and that actually heavily changed the experience and made it absolutely worthwhile, as it changed enemy placements, some big boss differences, etc. But here, I don't really know what's different. I guess the enemies have more health? But yeah, I was heavily disappointed when I saw that. Elden Ring is an amazing experience that actually pushed me into trying Dark Souls 2, which also ended up adoring. And frankly, it rekindled my faith in AAA games as a whole. Like, think about it. This massive, big chunk of an experience comes out with no microtransactions, no day one DLC, no day one patch that's like 50 gigs or whatever. Like, it doesn't handhold you in any ridiculous manner. So far, in fact, that people missed the tutorial, which I find hilarious. Yes, there's a tutorial in the game. If you're new, just when you start up the game, look to the right, a bit to the right. You can jump down and get like a nice tutorial. Again, like, it has rekindled and replenished my love so much that I want to buy DLC for this game. I want to support these developers. There's also the fact that it comes out pretty much fairly well optimized. Yes, during my 90 hours, day one, I had a lot of stutters. And overall 5 game crashes where I had to restart. Again, that's not okay, and we shouldn't just say, well, it was almost perfect and we should really give them a thumbs up for that. I'm not saying that. But considering how other modern big AAA games have come out and in what sort of state they've been in, I'd say, you know, wow, again, how did this happen? There's also the fact that the developers are already patching everything and trying to fix everything, and even brought in some side quests that apparently wasn't even finished, which is a bit weird, but at the same time it's already fixed now, so, you know, hey! I would also like to put in an amendment that my PC, you know, is not the strongest in the world, so maybe other people will have a worse experience or a better experience. Keep that in mind. A friend of mine whom I played with, and you can see him in the multiplayer segment, I don't think he had any crashes. So yeah, keep that in mind, that every PC sort of is different in their own way, so yeah. So, with this game's amazing gameplay, interesting story, and extraordinary presentation, is it for you? Well, that actually is the question, isn't it? If you have been a fan of these developers, of these games, then obviously you made your decision, but if you're new, pretty much like me, it highly depends on if you're open to get your ass handed to you, quite frankly. As I said, the first sort of wall, and the only wall I really faced, was at the very beginning-ish situation that made me start for like 2 hours, which again, I want to remind you, I was sort of underleveled and I didn't really have armor and stuff, and I kind of rushed there without exploring. That being said, I think this is the easiest Souls-like to get into, just by the nature of what kind of game it is, the open world nature. And that you can pretty much make whatever player choice you want to level up and come back and etc, etc. So yeah, it's a high recommendation from me. Again, you will be stuck a few places, but it is the beauty of the challenge, I would say. Well, actually, there was one place that I didn't really find that beauty, the beautiful sense of it. And again, it was a boss and a gimmick. Like, again, who in their right mind at FromSoftware thought it was okay to give a boss a gimmick where they can heal by hitting you, but the notion that I'm a tanky boy and I had a shield to which I can live I guess the Demon Souls trauma is still there.